Hi, Engine Shop Joe. Welcome back to the world of craziness. Got a call from a branch the other day and they said we've got a crane. When we start it, it barely keeps running, kind of like that Liebherr deal you just saw a week or two ago. But it's totally unrelated to that. It's a different problem. And they said that it takes it about 10 seconds of stumbling all over itself before it'll go up to idle and stay at idle. And then it's got a check engine light on for turbo speed faults. So I had them turn the key on, start the data logger in Insight All Parameters, and data log the engine not running, and then crank it and start it. And then as soon as the engine started to run normally and got up to about 1,000 RPM, I told them that I wanted them to save the log and send it to me. So I want you to think about what would make the engine barely keep running and then all of a sudden jump to normal idle speed, which in machines sometimes is not the same as a truck. And this would happen to be 1,000 RPM. That's base idle. And of course, that it's a different calibration. It's an industrial calibration that does that. But so put your thinking caps on, and I'm going to go ahead and show you the answer here. So right off the bat here, the engine's not running, but they start logging. I told them to log it before you start cranking, and we have 354 RPM, and they've never hit the starter. Now look over on the left. The left column is engine operating state. So normally when the key's on and it's not cranking, the operating state says engine stop. As soon as the engine sees RPM, it goes into crank state. Once it's in crank state, it is allowed to start. If the engine or ECM cannot get into crank state for whatever reason, the engine will never start. So crank state is a key here. So instead of engine stop and then crank state, we see turbocharger speed derate. Well, let's look over at the turbocharger speed, the very top data line there, and it's 12,000 RPM. There's an active derate. Why is that? It's because the ECM is not given any fuel and there's no torque. No torque means no fueling. You can see the green arrow there pointing to the 0 at net engine torque. Whenever the engine's running, there's always torque. Now, when you start cranking and it starts to give fuel to fire, you will see torque numbers come up, but not this high. 343 is extremely high. But again, look to the right. The ECM doesn't know what to do with that turbocharger speed. So it starts cranking and it's around 230 RPM. That's faster than cranking speed. Cranking speed at best is about 160 to 180. So it's actually firing injectors here, but it doesn't want to give it enough fuel to get the engine up to idle speed because it's got an active derate. Look at turbocharger speed derate. Active speed derate for the turbo, because the turbo can't be going 16,000 RPM when the engine's cranking. So the software doesn't know what to do. Finally, the engine starts, and it should crank, start, and go right up to 900 or 1,000 RPM, but it doesn't. It fumbles around at 300, 375, 4, 5, 5, finally 7, finally 8, and then you can't see it, but it finally hit 1,000 RPM. When it got to 880 RPM, it was able to jump into low speed governor state because the turbo speed derate went inactive because the turbo speed was allowed to be that RPM at idle, because don't forget this engine runs with pump loads, so you can have more turbo speed than normal. And then we see on the left that it went into low governor state and it would stay running at 1,000 RPM, but it would flash the check engine light on and off. And the problem was that that speed sensor in the turbo, which is it's a chip, a solid state sensor, whatever happened to it, it started artificially making turbocharger speed, and that was the cause of all of our problem. They changed the sensor and the problem went away. Thanks for joining me on Engine Shop Joe.